Hello everybody, welcome to Eigen TV. Today Murray's going to be talking about the long-term digitalisation partnership agreement that Eigen signed with Wintershall Dea, which has been a big deal and something that has been in the press, and lots of people have been talking about it. So what we wanted to do in our conversation today is really to try and explain kind of why it's so important, what is this amazing piece of work that we're now doing as a partnership with Wintershall, yeah, hopefully what it's going to look like going forward. So hi Murray.
Hi Effie.
So thank you so much for joining me. I think it'd be really nice to explain, maybe let's go back to the beginning and explain where the journey with Wintershall began, and then where we are today, just to help people understand kind of time frame, because I know it was a little while, what that movement kind of looked like.
Yeah, that's right. So we first started talking to Wintershall in 2018, and that was before they merged with Dea, I believe. And so they'd seen what we'd done with Lundin and with ENI, now Vår Energy, and were obviously interested, and so invited us in to show them. And those discussions went very well, and then we were invited to be part of their Braga Lighthouse project. And there we worked with them on some pilots to deliver to try and replace some existing functionality or prove we could do it. Those pilots lasted for about 6 months, and then there was an evaluation phase. The evaluation phase finished mid-2020, and we did press releases about that as well. And then we were very pleased that they decided to go with it and scale up across other assets and bring in their digital best bets and implement them in Ingenuity.
Yeah, no, and I think actually that's the key word, Ingenuity, because what I was going to actually ask was the work that we did on the Braga platform, which of our products did we use to complete that project with Wintershall Dea?
So it was Ingenuity, that's right, and also in the mobile apps that are part of that were all within the pilot. That's it.
And how did we use Ingenuity? What did Ingenuity do for them that wasn't happening before?
So the keys are that we were able to connect to data sources and remove spreadsheets from a lot of the manual workflows. So we were able to automate certain processes around their reservoir and production monitoring. So these are processes that tend to be very custom. There's a lot of spreadsheets and analysis involved, fairly complex, involving things like well testing, different configurations of wells over time, but a lot of manual entry of targets, comparing it to live data, say from well heads, valve positions and pressures and stuff. And so people were having to pull information from lots of different places and combine it together in spreadsheets or emailed reports. We were able to digitize that, and I think it's a great example of the hidden waste in organizations, where you've got very experienced people just doing a lot of manual stuff and spending their time either copying information or trying to make sense of it across different places. And there's huge benefit to be had by streamlining that process, automating what you can. That ensures more quality because it's repeatable. You've got less option for making mistakes, and also you limit the amount of rework with things, because if someone needs a planned value entered over here, if it's on a central digital system, then it can automatically appear in another place, rather than someone having to copy it again into another place and maybe lose track of the latest version and stuff. So as part of Ingenuity, we have tools that will import spreadsheets automatically and create time series, allow you to digitize regular reporting processes. None of it's particularly fancy. It's all actually quite low level stuff, I guess. But when you get it working, it just makes people's lives a lot better.
Yeah, but we've always said as well that sometimes simplest, I say simplest because I know Ingenuity can have many layers to it, but simplest things can actually create the biggest results, and that's probably the same case. I think what struck me as you were talking is that, and I know we've talked about this before, but within this context, the decision bridge technology. So the ability for for these systems to all come together, to get all of this information to be brought together, to enable people to take decisions and take action. probably haven't explained it as well as you would.
Yeah. But
I don't know if you want to just maybe pause and talk about that a little bit, because I think that's quite important, because that's something we've been talking a lot about in Eigen.
well, to me, that's one of the keys of the first steps when you digitalize something, is identifying what the workflows people are doing in their daily jobs, and you can't turn them off. They have to carry on day after day. So you have to do something in a step-by-step way that enables them to be shifted over to a more efficient way of working. And yeah, finding where your people are spending a lot of time doing stuff they're spending, let's say, more time than they should doing a job, just because it's hard to do and inefficient and the information's hidden, or the tools they're using are slowing them down. And I was amazed to find that one of the biggest improvements in human productivity came with the invention of the nail gun in construction. That just replacing a hammer with a nail gun allowed people to do the same thing, put a nail into something, but a lot quicker
Right.
and more reliably and easier. And suddenly structures went up much more quickly. So the way they were building didn't really change. That's continued to evolve at its own pace, but suddenly a new tool and the same people got a lot more efficient.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of parallels with this, in that it's not revolutionary as such, in that people still need to do the same work, but by giving them tools that speed it up, you get a lot of value very
Yeah.
quickly.
It's amazing. It really is. Thank you for that. I think if we can also now look at kind of, so that's Prague, that's what we've done, and kind of now where we are. Because obviously, like I said at the beginning of this, I know we've had there's lots of press releases that have gone out. I know Wintershall Dea covered it on their platforms, we've covered it on ours. But it'd be really nice to hear about kind of the work that we are doing now and the way that we are doing it, because I think that's very, very important as well.
That's right. So the projects are being set up as agile projects, and they're true agile projects in that we're running scrums, we're running in 2-weekly sprints. We have what we've defined is a resource level that we're going to run at, and then the team, it's a mixed team combined of Wintershall Dea and Eigen people, are deciding what work needs to be done in those sprints, and are going to manage it on an ongoing basis to get the results prioritized by what the users need.
So why Agile? Why was Agile chosen as the method for this project?
We found that it's really, really difficult to accurately define exactly what you want upfront. So when you're either defining something new, especially around software, or even replacing an existing process, working out exactly what the new thing you need to build needs to be, and then how long it's going to take, is really, really difficult. Because in reality, as the project goes on, people work out better ways of doing things, or ideas evolve and change. And if you're on a project where you've committed to a certain cost, or all the work's been done to nail down the scope, and then people have bid against that, and then it's very difficult to change. And so really what happens at the end of those projects is both sides of it are equally unhappy, because the users are not happy because their needs change, or the way they understood their needs changed during the project. And so what was being delivered no longer met those, but the costs had already been committed. And so the supplier is not happy because they're delivering something they know the users don't want, but they can't. The way things are structured, they can't deliver it. So, and also the cost of managing those projects and the cost of estimating changes adds a big overhead to the project. So when you have to bring a project in at a certain budget, you have to put overhead onto watching that and monitoring it. And that takes away from effort that you could be putting into actually doing development work. And then when a change comes in, it's very disruptive, because someone has to go away and work out the impact of that change on everything else. Whereas when we've done agile projects, we found that we've delivered much more in the time scale. The users are happier, and the overall project has cost less or the same. Or there's been a decision to then continue it on and deliver far more than was ever thought. And the reason is because it's de-risked for both sides, because all we're doing is we're setting the spend rate. then.
Yeah.
So the spend rate's fixed. It's really easy to estimate the cost on an annual budgeting
Yeah.
basis. And then it's just how much you can get through the team in that time. And you find that when everyone's then focused on, well, what can we get done, you do a lot more because no one needs to worry about what it's costing.
Yeah. I think as well, so from a commercial sense, absolutely. I think from the other side of it is that the best agile projects I have seen has been because it's enabled collaboration. So what do I mean by that? It means that the users, the developers, the UX teams, everybody has a joint interest in that product from the start. And it isn't a case of like with traditional waterfall projects where people dipped in and out. You have to stay consistently within that project because every few weeks at the end of those sprints, you need to make new decisions about what's next going to be developed, what that potentially could look like, etc. And that kind of collaborative approach enables people to then go on that project journey. So when you get to the other end and you land it, everybody should be bought into it. There are no surprises. Absolutely, from a cost perspective, it makes sense. And then hopefully it's being embraced. And we all know that kind of business change has always been one of the trickier elements. It doesn't matter how good your dev is or how good your project is, if it doesn't land and isn't accepted by the business. And that all that stuff is kind of dealt with along the way with Agile. So I think, yeah, from my side, I kind of think I could see both, like that's happening now with the project, and watching, how everyone is working together. So I just thought I'd mention that as
Yeah.
well, because
No, that's exactly right. Everyone on the team is completely focused on the end goal now.
yeah.
There isn't a man in the middle having to tell people, no, you can't do that. It's just one team now.
And I think actually, if you think about Agile, that's one of the most important elements of Agile, because I've worked on projects where there's been resistance to it, and a lot of work has got to go in at the beginning to help people understand kind of how it's going to work, and that actually what they're used to now looks like this, and it's slightly different. But if you trust the process and you can all commit to that process, you will still get something very, very good at the end of it. And I think in this case, both Wintershall Dea and Eigen kind of embrace that approach in order to be able to deliver on the project. So yeah, it's really interesting.
That's right.
I think the other question I've got is really, we know that we had Ingenuity, we've put a version of Ingenuity into Wintershall Dea. What are we doing now, like in terms of the project itself? Because I know we've given it a new name, but I'm not even going to go into those details. I'll obviously would love for you to explain so much better than me.
So now it's about implementing the functionality on top of Ingenuity, and there's various workflows that have been identified that need to be digitized to make people more efficient. And so we're targeting them one at a time. So the first one we're doing is a production technology workbench. That's what we talked about in the last press release. And that's again fairly involved. It's a critical workflow for management of production. We're also, so as part of that, we're going to be building new data connectors. One is to the Cognite data framework, which we're excited about, looking forward to seeing the performance of that. And then there's various functionality, some of it existing, and there's also going to be development of some new functionality within the platform, which is great.
Yeah. I think also within your blog, so anyone who's watching this, Murray also wrote a blog about the partnership with Wintershall Dea. So that's obviously on the website, eigen.co/blog. So you'll be able to go there and see it. But one of the comments that you made was around UX UI, because I think that's part of any type of project that I think sometimes people think it's too pretty and nice to have and not needed, but actually is absolutely fundamental to the success of a project, because that's how users essentially buy into it, because they can visually see what's going to happen. And I know that you mentioned in your blog posts that how we're using UX UI resources now within the project to help us. Would you like to expand on that at all?
That's exactly right. UI has always been really important to us, and we've always prided ourselves on making things look good. When we first started in 2007, the only tool that was available was a drawing tool. And I actually used numbers, I think, in the early days, because it was actually the best. But things have come on a long way. And since about 2015, 16, some new tools have been appearing, and a whole new workflow around UI, UX has come out. That's user interface and user experience design. As you say, Effie, it's absolutely key, because that will be how people interact with the product at the end. And everyone wants it to look good, whether it's spoken or unspoken at the start of the project. If it looks great and it's nice to work with, people love it. It's a really key part. And we found that the most uncontrolled projects we've done are where that work gets done on the fly during the build stage, because the people who end up doing the code, if they have to also design how it's going to work, it's very time consuming, because they have to stop and think, and it's not necessarily clear, and they may just do something to get it done, and it's not a good decision long term. And also, coders aren't necessarily graphic designers. The way someone is trained to write code doesn't mean that they're good at thinking about how things should be on the page. So it's actually a different skill set as well. So we found getting everyone involved and bought in early on to the user experience and user interface makes such a huge difference. And it's nice to have nice looking images then to show people through the project. And now we've always known that, and that's what we've tried to do. But the beauty of the new tools is they're web based, and they can also export component libraries at the end of the work that the developers can use to speed up the process. So we're using a tool called Figma, which has been great. And Wintershall have invested a lot in this. They've come up with a design library at the start of this project, which has made our lives much easier. There's already choices on colors, styles of things, icons. They're all made. It's great, and we can just plug them in.
It's brilliant. And I think because I know I often get, like, when I've spoken to different people in the past about different things, they always think UX and UI are the same thing, and they're not. They are different. I know you touched on that, but I think for anybody watching, if you're unsure of what that means, UX is the experience. It's kind of like the journey and the flow, generally how people get through, and they sort of go through different screens, how they get the information that they want to, etc. User interface, the UI, is actually the design. So that's actually going to be a button, it's going to be your style, your branding colors, it's going to be a style guide, those things. And sometimes they are two different people. Sometimes if that person can hold both those skills, and it'll be the same person. So I hope that's correct. That's
that's exactly right. User interface, sometimes you can't draw user experience. It's what happens when, but other times it's more obvious. It's like the placement of something on the screen to make sense. But yes, that's exactly right. It's how customers experience it.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And then where are you now? So where are you now with since kickoff? Since everything had been agreed and everyone's been running. Where
That's
are you
right.
now?
Well, we're literally just starting. We've done the setup sprint, and we're into sprint 1, which is the second sprint as we're going. So there's exciting stuff, the stuff we've never done before, such as coordinating sprints across 2 different sprint management systems. We've got Jira and Microsoft or Azure DevOps. So we've got an integration layer to sort that out, so the teams can collaborate and see what the backlog is and manage the sprints. So that's a new challenge for us. And there's also how we run multiple work streams within one Agile team. So it's kind of it's like a hybrid Agile approach, because the Agile team won't just be working on one thing the whole time. There's other things that will come in when they're possible.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, Murray, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. I'm sure we'll talk about this again as we go through the project, because I know there's lots of work ahead. But for anyone watching, I hope you found this useful. If you've got any questions at all, then please pop them below. And as always, we will get back to you, or visit eigen.co, where you can get in touch with a member of the team. But Murray, thank you once again. It was really, really lovely talking to you about this today.
Thanks, Effie.